My guests for tonight are Dr. Sagre Bambangi, NPP MP for Wale Wale constituency and also member of the Committee on Food and Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs, and Honorable Dr. Owusu Afriye Akoto, Member of Parliament for Kwadaso and Ranking Member, Committee on Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs, and NPP spokesperson on agriculture. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Dr. Afriye. The NPP's manifesto sums up the problem of agriculture and blamed it on incompetence. The data showed that from 2008 to 2015, agric has been on consistent decline from 7.8% in 2008 to some 2.4% in 2006. What is responsible for the decline in agriculture, which is supposed to be employing half of our workforce?
Two things are responsible. One is the withdrawal, I'll call it the withdrawal of public resources into the sector. And two is the wrong policy which this government has pursued in trying to resuscitate agriculture. Those policies as a group haven't worked, and the government still pursues that line of promotion. And secondly, and more importantly, the budgetary resources which are going into agriculture consistently been cut. 2008, when the NPP administration was leaving office, the total budgetary allocation for the year 2008, agriculture received nearly 4% of the total amount for promoting the economic activity in this country. Since then, consistently, the proportion has gone down to the extent that the last 2 years, 2015, 2016, is only 1.1%. So it means that for every 100 cities that the government sets aside to allocate for promoting economic activity, only one city, 10 pesos goes into agriculture.
Wow.
And it's come down from 4 cities to 1 city. And obviously, if you do that, the private sector is not putting in capital. Represented by credit, the banks have been cutting down on their credit to agriculture considerably. So the private sector is not doing much, and the government itself, which has the responsibility to promote agriculture, is also cutting back. So these two factors really shows you that the strength with which agriculture needs to be pushed is reducing every year, and hence the reduction in the rate of growth of agriculture over this period. And it's not just the rate of growth which is going down. You look at the various sectors, the various subsectors of agriculture, they're all coming down. The only area doing well has been the roots and tubers, which production has been going up. But otherwise, if you take the grains, for instance, they've been gyrating over the years. So it's not consistently going up, it's going like this. The next year it comes down. In spite of that, we are still self-sufficient. I must say that. We are still self-sufficient. So if we were doing great leaps and jumps into productivity, we could have a lot of grains to feed our poultry industry, the livestock industry, and to export to other West African countries. So there's a huge potential for development. You take cocoa, the big cocoa industry, the same thing. After hitting 1 million metric tons in 2010, 2011, production has been steadily coming down to below 1 million, to below 900,000, to below 800,000, and now we are at 750, 740,000 metric tons. And if these trends continue, it means that production in the next 5 years will be going further down. And cocoa still holds the economy of this country. So it's a very serious state of affairs, and yet the mismanagement and the corruption is amazing. When we get the cocoa proceeds, the target is to set aside 10% of it for chemicals and promotion of productivity and cocoa rows and so on. Now that figure has gone up to 25%. It means that a quarter of our total proceeds are set aside before fixing the producer price for cocoa. And that quarter, which is set aside, It's a lot of money. Last year, 150 million US dollars was set aside for cocoa rows. Where are the cocoa rows? Fertilizers and pesticides and other chemicals in the cocoa industry were supposed to cost us 838 million Ghana cedis, which is double the total allocation to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and the Ministry of Fisheries. And yet farmers are complaining all over they don't get the chemicals. Why? Because these chemicals are smuggled en masse to other neighboring West African countries as far as Cameroon, Nigeria, Togo, Niger, and all that. So it's total mismanagement which is causing the decline of the sector. And then, worst of all, the other symptom of the decline in agriculture is the huge amount of money we are now spending on importing food produced in this country. 8 food items, including rice, meat, poultry, vegetables, vegetable oils, salt, wheat, and so on. 8 of them. Initially, it's 2007, we used to spend $344 million in importing them. Steadily, it's gone up to 2.2 billion US dollars last year, which is equivalent to a total proceeds from cocoa. How can anybody run an economy like this? So the symptoms are there, the diagnoses are clear, and Nana Akufo-Addo has come out with proposing alternative solutions to the agricultural problem, which will really get to the bottom of it. That he's going to restore the cuts in the budgetary allocation to agriculture. He's going to defreeze this whole ridiculous system of not hiring extension officers and go into a faculty of agriculture in the universities and the colleges to hire these young men who have been trained and are sitting at home doing nothing, to help farmers, to link them up with the technology so that they can increase their productivity. It's going to make available enough fertilizers, change the whole system of distribution of farm chemicals so that they stay in this country to do the work for the cocoa, for our farmers from the savannah to the forest to the southern savannah area.
Doc, before we go into the elaborate plan that the NPP has for the sector, I would bring in Dr. Sagre at this stage. Dr. Sagre, you're from the northern region like me, and we know that when a Greek suffers, the northerners suffer, because the northern economy is largely driven by agriculture. Over the last 8 years, the NDC say that the northern farmer is better off than they came to meet him. How true is the statement?
Thank you, and good evening to our cherished listeners. Well, they are blowing their own trumpet, and I'm not surprised about that. But I don't think the northern farmer is better off now than, 10 or 8 years ago. But let me just say a little more about the misinvestment and mismanagement of agriculture by this government. Okay. For instance, when you talk about agricultural growth, one factor that determines it critically is technology, and it is extension officers who carry technology around to infest other farmers positively. We see, but this government has decided to place a ban on recruitment of extension officers. So our young men and women go to agricultural training colleges, veterinary colleges, and then when they finish, there is a ban on recruitment. And agriculture has not been identified as a priority sector to be exempted from the ban on recruitment. That is very ridiculous, because agriculture is as important as education and as important as health. Because when you eat good food, you may not even fall sick. Yeah. Yes, but there is a ban on recruitment in agriculture. So, in the Ministry of Agriculture. So there is we don't get replacement for our young men and women who retire. For our young men and women, for those old men who retire or those who die. So in the sector, there is no, technological delivery to farmers. So farmers don't get updates on new technologies,
Technology
and
for
that
farming.
is a very big problem. Those few extension officers who are still around, they lack logistics to work with, because if you look at the budget, there is very little on goods and services. The budget to agriculture, there's very little on goods and services. So the farmers are paid, the workers are paid, but they don't have what it has to go around and do their work. So they are not able to transmit the knowledge that they have to the farmers, and that is affecting our farms. It's affecting our farmers. But when it comes to the living standards of farmers, I would say that the farmers are worse off. Ask me why I am saying this.
Why?
If you look at other sectors like manufacturing, if you look at services sector, then the terms of trade has turned seriously against the farmer. For instance, the farmer in Wali or any community around my area may, on the average, if he puts in his best, be able to harvest 20 bags of maize for the whole year. And then he has 2 children in school, and he has to pay over 5,000 Ghana cedis for their school fees. The best price for a bag of maize may be just 100 Ghana cedis.
And that's the best price?
Yes, that's the best price. And so that farmer has 2,000 Ghana cedis to contend with. And yet, he has to pay 5,000 Ghana cedis for only school fees.
For just a child?
For just a child. And then how is he going to be left with a produce that can feed the family? What about other needs of the family? So the farmer is worse off. So I don't agree with anybody. If you have your head thinking right, you will not say the farmer is better off than some 10 years ago or 8 years ago.
We're already late into the program. I think that it is much more important to focus on what the NPP would do differently, because the understanding is that the NDC has failed. In fact, the Maputo Accord said that governments in Africa should invest 6% of their GDP into agriculture. We're doing far, far less than that. What would the NPP do differently, for example, to improve productivity in the agriculture sector?
Yeah, the NPP will, as my ranking just said, the NPP will step up the budgetary allocations to agriculture. And we are already lamenting that it is 1.1%. We, within the first year, will raise the allocation to agriculture to more than 2%. Yes, we will double the current allocation to agriculture. And we are not only going to double it, we are also going to make sure it is timely. Because currently, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture do not even get their releases on time. And I can tell you, in 2014, because they could not get their releases, they were not able to satisfy a crucial budgetary line, like subsidized fertilizer to farmers. So the whole of 2014, no single ton or bag of subsidized fertilizer was sent down to the crop farmers. It is because they couldn't get timely release of their resources. And because they couldn't get timely release of their resources, they could not pay their creditors. And because they couldn't pay their creditors, the suppliers said they would not supply. So the whole of that year, farmers waited and waited and waited until they had to go and buy at commercial prices. And you know, farming has to do with timeliness. If you are not able to release budgetary allocations on time to the sector, they will not also be able to, put in the programs in good time for the farmers to respond positively. And so that is what is affecting the sector. So from the first year, we will double the allocation. And if we are able to double it, then we can now start climbing steadily until we hit the target of the Maputo Declaration.
Okay. Dr. Akutofre, he spoke about doubling allocations to agri in order to be able to boost production. No doubt agri cannot survive without irrigation. What would be the NPP policy framework?
The famous Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo slogan, one town, one village, one dam.
Our opponent says that this is not feasible. It's not workable.
What is feasible, what is coming from NPP, as far as NDC is concerned? Either it's not feasible or they are already doing it. And if they are already doing as they claim, then the sector wouldn't be the decline that it is. It finds itself. So I would disregard them. One major input which the incoming administration of the NPP will put in place is to make sure that farm credit is also restored. And this will be through legislation to correlation with the banks, like it is in India, where in India, every $100 of credit of any commercial bank, $20 of it should go to agriculture. And they don't leave the banks with all the risk. At the end of the year, whatever is fails, the government and the banks share it out. So the governments will give tax holidays, tax credits, and so on to defray the cost to the banks and all that. So it is one area that we are going to tackle seriously. And then, of course, Agricultural Development Bank, which was formed in 1963 to meet the needs of the farmer, and which eventually abandoned the farmers, where, as I speak to you, only 4% of total disbursement from the Agricultural Development Bank is going to agriculture. We will also make sure we focus it and make sure that credit goes to the farmer. So in addition to what Dr. Babanji is talking about, that we're restoring budgetary allocations, and then extension services, we're also going to tackle the credit through this line. So with all these factors, Ghanaian farmers are not lazy, you know.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, north to south to east and west, farmers get up sometimes 5:30 in the morning, come back at 6 p.m. They're not lazy.
And sometimes they sleep over.
Exactly.
It's quite common in the north.
Exactly.
They sleep over in the farms.
So they have demonstrated time and time again that they can deliver. They just need public support, which they are not getting under this NDC administration.
Wow. For me, I have no doubt about what the NPP can do, because if you look at the record of the NPP from 2001 to 2008, the sector witnessed consistent growth. But research...
let me just make some quick follow-up on what my ranking said about the one village, one dam policy. You see, our opponents perhaps do not comprehend the problem. So if they are able to understand it, then maybe they will quickly jump at it again, because our free senior high school policy,
SADA policy,
they were the first to criticize them, and before we realized they were already there. And because they did not grasp the nitty-gritties of it, they went in and they have always failed. So the one village, one dam policy, we are not saying that in every village we are going to have a large-scale dam. Dams are at levels. We have dugouts, we have dams, and we have large-scale irrigation dams. If you go to the Upper East region, and particularly the Kassina-Nankana district, where I'm very conversant with.
Because you lectured UD.
If you go to almost every community, there is a small dam. If you go to Nayagania, if you go to Vunania, if you go to Saboro, if you go to Navrungo Secondary School, if you go to Notre Dame, almost everywhere in Navrungo, there is a kind of dam. Then we also have the Tono irrigation dam. Then we have the Via irrigation dam in Bolga. Then around Bolga, you can find dams around. And that is the reason why Upper East region produces a lot of fresh vegetables, even in the dry season. And that alone, if you watch Ajba, if you watch the Kayo people in Accra, most of them, in spite of the fact that the population of northern region is bigger than that of Upper East, but most of them come from northern region.
From northern region.
Because we do not have that system of dry season farming. There's no facility for us to do dry season farming. But if you go to a lot of parts of Upper East, because of that policy that was adopted during Acheampong's regime and some regimes later, you have these people
All
actively
year round
employed
farming, yeah.
all year round. So it does not mean that we are going to do small scale dams like the Via irrigation dam or the Bontanga irrigation dam in northern region in every village. But we will look at the size of the village and the needs of the village, and then we will do what is appropriate for that particular community. Even if there is the need, if we have cluster of villages and there is the need for us to do one dam for a cluster of villages, depending on the sources of water and the geography of the area, then you do it. But the catchphrase is one village, one dam. But you see, when we say it, then they say, oh, it means that when we go to a place like Tunguri in my constituency, because we have Tunguri, Dure, Bani, we are going to give each of them a dam. No.
Because sometimes the farmers from this village would move to this
that
village
is why
to
I
farm,
am saying that depending on the way the cluster is. But we want to make sure that the implication is that every village should have access to a dam so that they can do dry season farming.
There's an example of that. I would put that through before we go for a quick commercial break. When we were in government, the then mayor of Tamale, Honorable Alhaji Adam Yoho, constructed some dams in the Tamale North and Tamale South constituency, Fushegu, Kudula, Manguli, and Warvoguma. Up till today, that was in 2003. Those dams are still available, and these communities supply the whole of Tamale vegetables during the dry season.
That's right.
And was done just for 7,000 Ghana cedis at that time.
That's right.
We'll go for a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Tonight we're discussing the state of agriculture in Ghana and the NPP's policy proposals towards arresting the declining state of agric in Ghana. Doc, one of the major challenges to agriculture is the fact that it is not attractive to young people. So you have only the aged who are into agriculture. So by virtue of their age, they're limited to hoe and cutlass farming. And that is not a sustainable way. What would the NPP do to make agric attractive to young men and women in Ghana?
First of all, you have to ask yourself, why is it not attractive?
Absolutely.
It's not attractive because of the disinvestment. Disinvestment means that since a private sector activity, the government has to come in what in economics we call the public goods to support the infrastructure, the marketing infrastructure, the agro-processing infrastructure for value addition and so on, to make it profitable, and the government to guarantee a market for the produce of the farmers at remunerative prices to support at a certain level. All these props are not there. Unfortunately, 40 years ago, they were there. The food distribution company was a very popular public outfit with silos and warehouses all over the country. And since the demise of the Champon regime and immediately thereafter, all these have gone into disuse and disrepair, and they are dotted all over the place. So this is the area that we need to look at to support farmers so that farming becomes productive, profitable. And when it becomes profitable, nobody will tell you as a young person, unemployed, that you should go there. You go to Western Nigeria today, professors and lawyers and all kinds of doctors and professionals are rushing into cocoa production because cocoa has become so profitable that if you are sitting in the surgery looking at patients, at the end of the day, the amount of money you earn, and you go there and plant maybe 10 hectares of cocoa, what you earn at the end of it is maybe 3, 4, or 4 times the income you get from sitting in the surgery. You will run to the field. And this is what we have to recreate. It was there in Ghana. You know, whole sections of Kumasi, where I was born and bred up, was built on cocoa money in the 1940s and 1950s. My father typically was one of them. Had to go travel 80 miles to almost to the border with Cote d'Ivoire in a place called Gambia No. 2 beyond Mem in Brunhafo region now, to establish a plantation with his friends and his brothers. And the wealth that he created built our house in Ashanti New Town. Ashanti New Town, which is now they call it Ashtown, was built on purely on cocoa money. And nobody told them to run to the bush to do it from Kumasi, because it was profitable to do it. So we have to recreate those economic conditions so that it becomes economically attractive for the kids and the young people to rush into it. And that is the vision of the Adodankwa Akufo-Addo, to bring about a transformation which will make agriculture so profitable, everybody will be begging to go into it.
Dr. Sagret, the NPP has a three-tie program for the North. Northern industrialization, northern mechanization of agriculture, and northern education, which would be the anchor for the Northern Development Authority program. What is the state of mechanization of agriculture in the North?
Well, I would say it's nothing to write home about now, because we were supposed to have a good number of agricultural equipment in the country. We have not fared well in terms of policies towards attracting the importation of these equipment or the establishment of any factory within the country to deliver these equipment. So I would say the state of agricultural mechanization is still not the best, and we will need to do so much in that area. But for now, I think what we are looking at is to ensure that the agricultural sector, because the sector is not attractive to the young people, we want to find a way of intervening in the value chain. And if we intervene in the value chain, then the system will become attractive and provide incentives for these people who are rational beings. Everybody is looking for a softer ground, you see. So if you produce and you make profit, it encourages you and empowers you to produce. But if you produce and you make a loss, you are discouraged. Apart from the discouragement, it also disempowers you. You may not have the means to produce again. And I'll give you an example. In my constituency, I can say about 40% of the young men went into watermelon cultivation in the past few years. But it has been a gamble. Some of them harvest it at a time that the price is good and they make it. Others harvest it, so others even cannot harvest, because at the time of harvest, it costs more to harvest it than even selling. Yeah. So if you harvest it to sell, you make a loss from only the harvesting and the selling. What about the cost of production? So I know some young men who went into watermelon farming. Some did as many as 5 acres. That's about 2 hectares. And then they could not just harvest. Not that the yield wasn't good. The yield was very, very good. And yet, it didn't mean anything to go and harvest. Going to cost because them if you go and pick them, nobody will even be prepared to give you 50 cedis for a big, fruit of watermelon. So that is one of the reasons why we have this one district, one factory policy. We are going to look around and see the economic potentials, agricultural potentials of every district, and ensure that we facilitate and work around to ensure that an appropriate factory is situated around that area so that it can process the agricultural produce to complete the value chain. If that is not done, and we are going to rely on, this lack for people to come around and buy the watermelon, it's going to be a problem. So, for instance, I am earmarking my area for watermelon production. I mean, canning of watermelon or processing of watermelon. And if that is done, we are going to have a lot of, some of the people in Accra and Kumasi who are here looking for jobs that do not exist will come back. Yeah. And when they come back, the economy is going to be boosted because they will be more productive. As they are here, their marginal productivity is almost zero. But when they come up, their marginal productivity will be positive. That means they will be adding more production to the Ghanaian economy. And that is how we are going to grow. So when we tie this to, education. People go to school, they learn, they come back, they have jobs, because these factories will be employing people, and those who are able to also produce, when they expand their farm, they will also employ people. People will go commercial, and then we are going to have a ready market, and people will also be able to pay their school fees, and then their children will grow in education. And now, if we establish the Northern Development Authority, we are also going to have this free education at the senior secondary school level in the country. And so there, the people are going to be relieved in a way. And then we work towards progressively making education free, even at a higher level. But you can see the NDC, they said they cannot make education free at the secondary level, and they now claim that they will make some part of tertiary education free. So you see that they are not consistent. They don't know what they are talking about. We are the masters of the game, you see. But unfortunately, we have had only 8 years to rule Ghana since the 24 years of our democracy. So even if there is decline in agriculture or there is deterioration in the living standards of the people, who should be blamed more? Because out of the 24, we have only 8, and they have how many?
Absolutely. Doc,
yes.
1 minute, your final word.
My final word goes to the farmers and fishermen of Ghana. This week has been set aside to honor the work that farmers and fishers are doing. We are very familiar with the Herculean task they are facing in delivering their service to Mother Ghana, as we have recounted in this program. And we are sure farmers and fishermen, Nana Adodankwa Akufo-Addo, is coming to reduce their burden by giving them support to enable their enterprise flourish so that Ghana can move forward.
Viewers, you've heard it all. The NPP has a superior record as far as managing the agricultural sector is concerned. In 2001, when the NPP came, they inherited a sector which grew at 2.7%. At the time they were exiting office, Agric posted a growth rate of some 7.8%. After 8 years of a supposed better Ghana, Agric has declined from 7.8% to 2.4%. What that means is that many of our farmers and fisher folks have become poorer than they came to meet them. The NPP and Akufo-Addo are promising once again that given the mandate to govern on December 7th, he would again assemble a team of competent men to transform the fortunes of our country and to make sure that Agric reclaim its lost glory. See you next week for yet another interesting edition of Minority Caucus. Good night.